Hello to all my friends in the bookish community. Welcome back to my channel. For those who are new, my name is Monica, and for those who are not new, welcome back. It's great to see you here again, and it's great to be here. In today's video, I am going to be doing the book recommendation tag. So I was tagged to do this by Victoria from under Victoria's Spell, so thank you, Victoria. I am always excited to talk about books, because that's why I started this channel, was to talk about romance books, because in my life, I'm the only one who does read romance in my family. So thank you. And for anyone who wants to check out her video, which is fantastic, I will leave her video down below. And so let's just get into my answers. So the first question is, a book you tell people is your favorite. I used to tell people that Pride and Prejudice was my favorite. And it was for like a hot minute there, but I have since read a lot of different romance books, but my favorite that I now tell people, and I always recommend, is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This is a clean romance, but also it is a very heartfelt romance, and it's beautiful. And I loved every minute of this book. And this is Alexis Montgomery and Daniel Grant, and he is younger than she is, and it deals with some traumatic themes in such a beautiful and heartfelt way. And I just loved every minute of this book. This is just such a good book. So for people who are not normally romance readers, I always say Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. So question 2 is a book that is your guilty pleasure. Okay, this has to be 2 books because you can't really read one without the other. I mean, you could, but I feel like to get the full impact of the story, you need to read them both. First one is Twisted Emotions and Twisted Pride. And the reason why I love these books so much is because Nino Falcone and Remo Falcone, they are very strong heroes, but also Serafina and Chiara are very strong heroines. And they go through some pretty big crap in these books. And they're twisted. These books are twisted, hence the name Twisted. In this one, Chiara is dealing with trauma from, trigger warning, past childhood rape from her uncle. And this is an arranged marriage. And he finds out on the wedding night that she is not a virgin. She's afraid because he's part of the Camorra, and she's part of the Familia, which are 2 different factions of the Italian mob. Instead of getting angry with her like she thought he would, not only does he get Remo in on it, but they go after the uncle who physically and emotionally traumatized her. It's not just that, it's how he treats her. He treats her like she's strong and wonderful. And I loved every minute of how he gave her what she needed. And she eventually got him to feel more so than he ever had, because he had trauma from his childhood. And you also meet, well, we already know Remo from book 1, but this is when their plan is hatched for Twisted Pride. And this is a kidnapper romance. So Remo kidnaps Serafina, who is a mafia princess from the Chicago outfit. And this one is really, really good. She does not cower. She stands up to him. She knows she's gonna be in for it with this guy. She gives it all she has, and she meets him toe to toe, and she knocks him on his butt, and it's fantastic. And I loved every minute of these. And yeah, so these are my guilty pleasures, and I love a good mafia romance when it's done right, and these 2 are just fantastic. Now, question 3, a book everyone loved but you didn't. Oh, that's easy. If This Is Love by Julianne. And I am the outlier here because everybody has been gushing about this book. I mean, Christi from Christi Reads a Lot Liezl, Cheyenne. I mean, I think Nicki from Nicki and Bookland also loved it, but I didn't. And the reason why I didn't is because she read too young. It was like Cowboy Mafia, and they're happily ever after. And I'm willing to do angst. I love a good angst, but I do not like it when I feel like I'm trapped in a country song, Jolene by Dolly Parton, and I do not like that it took so long for them to really stand up for themselves. I am okay with, I love good character growth, but it can't be at the last 10% of the book. And I felt like it was at the last 10% of the book. And so that's why I didn't like it. However, I will say this. This is the first Julianne book that I have read that I did not love. And this was like the 4th book I think I've read from her. She is still a strong writer. If she made me hate these characters as much as I hated them, that's a win. Because if it wasn't for the writing, I probably would have been indifferent. If I'm not invested in the romance and I'm not invested in either rooting on or hoping that a character is going to get his comeuppings, it's because the writing isn't strong. The writing is really, really strong in If This Is Love, but I just cannot stand the characters. And there's nothing that Julianne could have done differently. Well, no, she could have done a lot differently to make me love those characters. Because again, don't mind angst, love angst. I do not like the book, the way this book played out. I did not think either the hero or the heroine were strong characters. I thought they were both very weak and very cowardly. They were basically chess pieces in Fletcher's game of who I'm going to make do what I want them to do, because he was manipulating everybody. But at the end of the day, they wanted to be together, but they went along with Fletcher's plan, and they wouldn't fight for each other, because that's essentially what happened up until the last bit of the book. And I'm just like, by that point, I was just like, but I didn't, yeah. And she read young. It started off when she was 10 years old, which is too young to start a romance novel with, unless there's a very, very good reason for it. And I didn't feel like it was a good reason for it. She should have started it off when she was like 16, 17, and I would have been fine with it. But even then, that's really young. But no, it didn't work for me, but it worked for everybody else. So I'm glad it worked for everybody else. And she is still a very strong writer, and I will absolutely be picking up another book from her. Question 4 is a book that I read the fastest. I can't tell you that because I read pretty fast, even when I read physically. But if I have it in an audiobook, I go faster. But I will say this. I'm going to actually kind of cheat and make this a series. And it is Devney Perry's Runaway series, because it's really one large story in a series. And it's about these 5 kids who used to live in a junkyard after having run away from bad situations in their childhood. They grew up, and now they're driving, each is driving their Cadillac from starts in Massachusetts and goes down to West Virginia with London, and then the next girl, she takes it from West Virginia to Montana. The next, and then she has her second chance romance, and then the next one goes to from Montana to Oregon, and that one is friends to lovers, and then the next one is one of the twins. She goes down from Oregon to anyway, so she goes down to Arizona to see her twin sister, and it's her romance with her sister's billionaire boss, and it's Surprise Baby, and it's fantastic. I loved every minute of it. And then the last one is her twin sister goes to California to meet Carson, who's the only man in the friend group. And it's Clara and Carson's romance, and it ends the series in a very solid way, and definitely with a great epilogue. Even though if you don't like epilogues, this epilogue is actually very good, and it ties the entire series together. So it's like reading one very large story where you have different parts with different couples. So I loved it. Question 5. A book that deserves more hype. I try never to talk about the same author twice in the video, but I have to say The Things We Leave Unfinished by Rebecca Yarros. This one is a dual timeline, and it's Georgia Stanton. She's in present day, and Scarlett is her grandmother. Her grandmother had just died. She was a famous romance author, and she goes back and she finds this whole unfinished manuscript about Scarlett's romance with her husband Jameson, who died in World War II. He was a pilot, and he was flying in the Battle of Britain, and it is definitely a Rebecca Yarros book because she puts you through the emotional ringer. And I don't generally like dual timelines, but because you had two romances, you had Georgia and Noah Harrison, who is the writer who was supposed to finish this manuscript, as well as Scarlett and Jameson. I felt like this book did it incredibly well, and I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it, and I really do recommend this book. It is fantastic, and I really hope they do make it into a movie sometime. Okay, so now speaking of which, the next question is a book that is becoming a movie or TV show. The one book that I know is becoming a movie, put down books and go watch the show, and it Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, and the show is Schitt's Creek. Schitt's Creek has become one of my comfort TV shows, and it's all because of It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, and this is going to become it's been optioned for a movie, and I really do hope it follows through. I think it's a fun book. Is it a top favorite? No, but it was a really good time. I enjoyed every minute of it. It was a 5-star read for me, and I hope this is one of them that gets out of the pre-production vortex and gets made into a movie. So question 7 is a book you have read the most. Wrong, by Jane Austen. Actually, all of Jane Austen. I read Jane Austen when I need to laugh, or if I need to stop thinking about things, because I sometimes get very fixated on things, and she makes me laugh. I love her humor. She does great secondhand embarrassment. This is a gynecologist, senior and college age gap romance, and the way she figures out who he is, because she was fighting for him before, because she had a crush on him, and yeah, and then she goes to the student union because she wanted to get on birth control because she was ready to take that next step with her current boyfriend, who ended up being a douchebag, and he walks in and he is her gynecologist, and it is so funny. Like, it is rom-com funny. I was laughing through the entire thing. I was laughing through every single other of the books, and I know that it's not for everybody, but it's for me. I love Jane Austen. I love Erin Allen. She is a fantastic narrator. I was recommended this book by a friend of mine because Jane Austen is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. She is a fantastic human being. She writes quirky, funny rom-coms, and because of this, I found a lot of different authors I would have never found because I listened to the audio. When we had Audible Escape, I looked up all of Erin Allen's stuff and started listening to all the different things, and I got to know different authors through reading Wrong. But I read it, and not only do I read it physically, but I also listen to it all the time, like 2-3 times a year at least. And the same with all the other books, and they're all up here. So I just love Jane Austen, and I am going to put Dr. Luke Miller right up here because he's fantastic. So that is one of my favorite books of all time, and it's definitely one I read a lot. Question 8 is a book from a genre you don't typically read. Memoirs. I don't usually read them, but after listening to someone talking about Paris, a memoir by Paris Hilton, I decided to pick it up, and I'm really actually glad I did. So her story is incredibly traumatic. She was basically abused from 14 on. She was groomed. She was neglected. She lost her virginity through being drugged and raped. And then she spiraled. Her parents did not attempt to figure out why she was spiraling. Instead, they had the school come and take her in the middle of the night. She was basically yanked out of her bed. Thought she was being kidnapped. They put her in these schools that were physically, sexually, emotionally abusing their students. There are students who died at these places. They would pit one student against another. They were starving them. She was malnourished by the time she got out, which caused later in life infertility. There's a lot of different things that happened to her, even afterwards, where people were using her and exploiting her, other than the simple life. But I felt really bad for her. I mean, this is not a poor little rich girl situation. She was really traumatized and she was really abused. And the way she wrote this book was very matter of fact, very succinct in how she wanted to present the information. And she did this with the blessing of her husband, who really is one of the only people who've ever really supported her. And I gave this 5 stars. I couldn't give it anything but 5 stars. But I cannot say it's a favorite, because I never say memoirs are a favorite or not a favorite. Unless it's like true crime, nonfiction, I'm good with that. But with this type of book, I feel weird about rating someone's life. This is her life. This was her life. This was her journey. She put it on page and gave it to the masses to say, listen, this does happen and we need to stop it. And I have a lot of respect for her because of her telling her story the way she told it. And I do highly recommend that you do pick it up. However, check trigger warnings, because, I mean, she talks about a lot of trauma that happened to her in her life, and it's really hard to sit there and read or listen to whatever medium you're going to consume this book, but I highly recommend it. Okay, number 9 is a book that deserves all the hype it gets. Christi by Mariana Zapata. I don't really talk much about Mariana Zapata, but I absolutely love her. This is a soccer romance. This is also slow burn and age gap. Christi is her soccer coach, and her name is Sal, and she is in the female major leagues for soccer in Texas, and she's not getting the credit she deserves. There's a lot of stuff that happened between her and another soccer player, but I loved the banter with these two. It is definitely hate to love. I don't know if he really hated her. I think he was just salty. He was just a very, very grumpy guy. Anyway, and I love her family. Her family is fantastic. I love the romance, even though it was really slow going for most of the book. And I think this book deserves all the hype it's gotten, and I loved it. Number 10, a book you usually recommend when asked to give a recommendation. Okay, so there's 2, and honestly, it really depends who I'm recommending it to. And for the historical is Devil in Winter by Liezl. This is a scoundrel romance. He is not a good guy, but this is also a marriage of convenience. She knows what she's getting into when she asks Sebastian St. James to marry her, because because in the last book you find out that he's a really bad guy. Not so bad as in terms as a serial killer or a mobster, but he does do something pretty unforgivable in book 2. So they go to Gretna Green to get married, and he does all these little things like putting a warming stone so her feet stays warm. She has a stutter. She has these horrible relatives who are trying to marry her off to her cousins, because her father owns a gaming hell, one of them Jenner's, which is one of the biggest gaming hells in London, and so she's set to inherit a lot of money. and so her relatives wants that money. So they've basically been abusing her and neglecting her for a very long time. And so to save herself and her money, she marries Sebastian St. James, because she knows he's going to protect her. He knows that he's going to do what needs to be done when it comes time to taking care of her family. And he does, and he does all these little wonderful things for her, and they have the best banter. She takes care of him, he takes care of her, and she is a very strong heroine. He is a very strong hero, and it is a great redemption arc. I love a good redemption arc. This one is one of my absolute favorites from Liezl, and I always recommend this one. In fact, he's gonna go up next. Sebastian is gonna go up next to Dr. Luke Miller and Evie. The next one is Happily Letter After by Keelan and Penelope Ward. This one is Sadie and Sebastian, so another Sebastian. I did not do this on purpose. So this one starts off with a letter that his daughter Birdie writes to Sadie, who works, I think, at a magazine or a newspaper or something. She grants wishes during the holidays, but it's not the holiday season. Birdie's mom has recently died, had ovarian cancer. Anyway, so Sadie goes out of her way, and gives him tube socks and gives Birdie black olives, and then to say Santa's real, even though it's not Christmas time. And Sadie just starts wondering more about this guy, and she pretends to be a dog trainer, and eventually he figures out what's going on, and they have a really interesting conversation, and it's just their very slow building relationship, and there is a twist at the end that's actually very much a Keelan and Penelope Ward twist. When you ever read Keelan or Penelope Ward, their stuff sounds really fun on paper, like it's going to be a good time. They put some trauma and dramatic stuff in these books, and this one was one of the better ones. I absolutely love this one, and I think it's a really good one to dip your toe into the romance genre. So if I'm recommended this to someone who doesn't necessarily read a lot of romance but wants to know more, so this is one I highly recommend for that. Number 11, a book that has your favorite characters. I'm giving you two books again, one for the female and one for the male. Female, Heartless by Elsie Silver, because of Willa. The way she sticks up for Luke, pushing that kid in the pool. As a parent, I understand that impulse very much, because when someone is bullying your child, you can't do anything because you're an adult, it's really difficult. But also, I loved how she was herself. She's very strong. She put up with a lot of shenanigans and a lot of crap, and she did it with grace. And I loved every single minute of this book. And I loved her dynamic with Luke and with Cade. Cade is the dad, and all I can say is that kitchen scene during the party. Whew. But yeah, Willa is one of my favorite female characters. And so for my male character, and this is not out of left field, but Cletus Winston, Beard Science. Cletus is diabolical. He tried to give someone, what was it? Leprosy through armadillos. He plants evidence to make sure people who are bad are taken care of. He has stolen evidence out of the sheriff's office because he wants to plant it in someone else's car to make sure that they get in trouble. And that's how Jen Sylvester catches Cletus. And she basically blackmailed him into a teach me type of situation. She wants a husband. She knows she's not going to get one because she's a caricature of the banana cake queen that her mother and her father pigeonholed her into. And he helps her get out of it in such a way. Like, he was going to try and go after her, but she had this video of him sneaking out of the police station with this evidence that mysteriously went missing. So she's like, you're gonna help me get a husband or I'm going to turn you in. And so yeah, it's fun. Like, he is diabolical. Like, he's a mad genius, and what he does to help his family and to help the ones he loves is so great. I mean, Cletus Winston is by far one of the best Winstons in this whole entire series, and he's definitely one of my favorite heroes because, again, he's diabolical, but in such a way that's kind of endearing. He's smarter than what he looks like. He pretends to be this aw shucks kind of backwoods hillbilly. I love it. Great book. Love the series. But Cletus Winston is fantastic. Number 12, a book you wish you could live in. Okay, again, I'm cheating. It's a book series. Sorry, not sorry, but the Bailey Brothers series. Every single Bailey Brothers series. Like, this is such a good series. And the Bailey Brothers live in Telecom, Washington. They have crazy squirrels. There's this whole arching plot over some missing treasure. There is a ongoing feud between the Baileys and the Havens to the point where the town is split into two, and that whole thing gets resolved in these books. Well, with the exception of how the Grump saved Christmas, but this is in the same universe, and it is Telecom. And part of this book happens in the last book, which is Rewriting the Stars, which is how the feud is resolved. It is it is funny, it is fantastic. I loved every minute of it. All of the characters are fantastic. All of the heroes are fantastic. I love every single heroine. And there's so many different tropes. The best one out of them all, if I had to pick, which is very difficult to do, is Unraveling Him, because it's Grumpy Sunshine and Forced Proximity, because they go on a road trip, and then she ends up living with him, and then it's just fantastic. But also Rewriting the Stars, which is Enemies to Lovers, or they actually were dating in secret, and it's Single Mom, and it's just wonderful. But anyway, if I could live in any of those worlds, it would just be the Bailey Brothers world, because I just love that world. And she's writing a new series with the Havens, and I cannot wait. I know she's working on it now, but Claire Kingsley needs to get on this because I cannot wait to read about the Havens. Number 13, a book you thought you would hate but ended up loving. Again, this is going to be a series because it has to be the series. It's the ACOTAR series. I am not pulling out that series. It is very large. I barely was able to get all the Bailey Brothers out. I did not think I was gonna like ACOTAR because I don't generally read fantasy. I'm not a fantasy person, never have been. I don't mind it, but it's not my go-to. And it was so hyped, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I was gonna really enjoy it or not, but I do. I loved Feyre and Rhys's romance. Still think they did Tamlin dirty, especially in the Court of Wings and Ruins. And I would love to see Sarah J. Maas write a book for him where he gets his happily ever after. That was a great book trilogy. I'm pretending A Court of Frost and Starlight does not exist because it was not necessary, but A Court of Silver Flames is my favorite because it's Nessa and Cassian's story. Nessa has one of the best redemption arcs or character growth from book one, where she was incredibly selfish, to her own book at the end of her own book, where she really does a big sacrifice to save her sister Feyre, and when Feyre was having a baby. And I loved how Cassian was so sweet and patient with her as she was working through her craft. She had a lot of stuff she had to work through, and he was just always there for her. And I loved every minute of that book, but you have to read in order. So I didn't think they were going to work for me. I was like 99% positive they weren't going to work for me, but I decided to give them a go, and I'm glad I did. Number 14, a book that made you cry. I know I'm cheating when I am recommending another Rebecca Yarros book, but The Last Letter made me bawl like a baby. I am not kidding. The first time I read this, I read it on paperback when it first came out, and I cried. I was like, oh my gosh, that wrecked me. And then I decided about a year or two ago to reread it. Yeah, it was last year. I decided to reread it. I was in the middle of Lowe's Home Improvement, looking at wood, and I was like, I'm not gonna cry again, because I already cried out, and I knew what was gonna happen at the end. And I cried in the middle of a home improvement store. But this book is incredible. The writing is really unique. I loved every minute of this book, and I highly recommend this. Number 15 is A Book You Wish You Could Read for the First Time. Again, this one was a no-brainer. Liezl by Christi. This was my favorite book of 2022. I still re-listen to it. I love this book. I love Liezl, the banter between him and Ellie, the crap that they give each other, and the fact that they both can give it and receive it. Because he's a vampire prince who is so prideful that he can't understand why his mate would be a 19-year-old human girl. And oh, the dynamics of this book. It was fantastic from beginning to end. This is everybody's favorite, and there's a reason why. This is just a great book from beginning to end. Loved it. And I would highly recommend you read this. You should read this in order. You really should read this series in order. But, because he's a bad guy. He's a really bad guy. But when he gets into it with Ellie and she gives it right back to him, oh my gosh. When he sends her, when he sends her his heart and she sends him her middle finger, oh wow, that was fun. I was laughing through that whole entire scene. I was like, oh my gosh, that is great, because of the type of book it is. So yeah, those are my answers. And thank you, Victoria, for tagging me. This was a lot of fun. And I do not know who has done this or who has not done this. I mean, I think I do. I think everybody's done this. Mostly. I don't know. If you haven't done it, this is me tagging you, because I don't know who's done it or who hasn't done it. But anyway, so those are my answers. And let me know if you have any different answers down below, or if you read any of these books and what you thought of them. And if you don't want to leave me any of those comments and you just want to leave me an emoji, leave me a book emoji. Anyway, thank you for watching the video, and make sure you like and subscribe, and I will talk to you in my next video, and happy reading, everybody. Bye.